Hey, Adam.
Hey,
Welcome.
good evening. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, sir.
Where are you coming from right now?
I am currently located in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Awesome. Well, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, so first, I'm a student, of course, at Rocky Mountain University of Health Professions. I'm in the PhD in Health Sciences track with a concentration in human and sports performance. I've been with RMU since May of 2022, so it's been a little over 3 years now. I've enjoyed it a lot, but I'm certainly happy to have entered into the final phase with approximately 3 semesters left. And so wrapping up that dissertation process now, but the work has just begun, I suppose.
What is your dissertation on?
So it's analyzing the effects of what's called autoregulation in concurrent training, where autoregulation basically changes the intensity or volume of a workout program automatically. And that's for a concurrent training program, which is the blend of strength and endurance training.
Wow, that's fascinating.
It's a lot of fun.
How's that progressing?
It's been going great. So, I think the best piece of advice I've received is you're not trying to change the world with your dissertation. You're trying to make a very large impact on your field without trying to get, let's say, too complicated and try to do too many things at once.
We keep all the dissertations in the library, so I look forward to reading
Right.
it down the
Yeah.
line.
Yes, sir.
Well, tell me how you got interested in artificial intelligence.
Yeah, so a little bit, I guess, a little bit of background about myself. So I grew up as an athlete. I've been super into concurrent training, which again is strength and endurance blended. And I've been coaching people for a little over a decade now. I spent some time in the Army, got my bachelor's degree in kinesiology, spent about 3.5 years active duty after I commissioned as an officer. Spent a little time as an enlisted soldier before that, but then as I was going through like my coaching practice, of course, like everybody, constrained on time, I continue to always ask myself sort of what aspects of this coaching process can I or should I be automating in terms of, let's say, the progressions of sets or reps or weight or distance run, those types of things. And so I kept sort of trying to make more, let's say, simplistic formulas that would respond to my clients that I was working with. And then the more I continue to dive deep in that, the more you can start to discover, let's say, I can start to automate a lot of these processes and then spend more time having conversations with the person themselves. And so I kept asking, what about these processes can I automate so that I can spend more time in this face to face sort of art of coaching and this communication and human to human feedback, let's say.
Yeah. So, as a writer, uh, people ask me if I'm scared that AI is going to take over my profession. And I heard a quote. Somebody said, AI is not going to replace you, but somebody who knows how to use AI might.
Right.
It sounds like you've really embraced how to use AI in your profession. That's commendable.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I certainly think that there's a certain degree of, let's say, tonality or unique approaches to personalization of writing styles that, I'm not sure that it's there to where it'll replace at scale, but it can certainly do a pretty decent job of certainly assisting in the writing process or assisting in the coaching process. And so it's those people who are leveraging AI to basically bring out those advantages of what it could help you with, and then you leveraging it to basically improve your own like daily processes, right?
Well, a couple of years ago, time flies. We did an article on you. You had won the
Mm-hmm.
Pat Tillman Scholar Award in 2023, and I was just so impressed. Like you kind of glossed over a few of the things, but you're here. I'm gonna show. We have like the list of Adams. Your resume is not short, my friend. That the Tillman Scholar, President's Award for top cadet for 4 years. You're a four-time varsity letter winner at Indiana University, valedictorian. You're a
Yes,
busy
sir.
guy, and you do endurance sports. How do you find the time for all that stuff?
Everything I'm blessed enough to do is really just like part of my passion for what I'm trying to do and better myself in a lot of different ways. So, I think it's a blessing to be able to pursue things that I'm passionate about.
That's awesome. Uh, I wanted to read just a little bit, a little excerpt from the article
Sure.
that was expertly written. Let's just add.
It was by RMU, not me. So,
It's talking about what's next on the docket for you. You know, you'd won the Pat Tillman Award, and you went through uh, your studies and whatnot. And it says that you're pursuing a PhD with a lofty goal in mind. This part was really interesting. With his background in the Army, athletics, and education, he intends to directly influence the health and human performance mission of the entire military in a leadership role. And then the Tillman Foundation quoted you as saying, "Throughout my time in combat, I have seen fitness be the difference between life and death. I aim to empower service members with tools to optimize their fitness for improved health." I mean, that's a really admirable and lofty goal. Could you expound on that a bit?
Yes, sir, absolutely. So when it comes to my time in the military, I spent a little over 7 years in the Army infantry. And when you're looking at the military and human performance as a whole and the military's approach to human performance, how much money is invested into the hardware for, let's say, warfighting. So planes or bombs or weapon systems, like those types of things are heavily invested in. But there should, of course, be some degree of investment in the human element, right? The soldier, the guardian. The famous saying is that humans are more important than hardware. It's important to invest in let's say, the hardware of the warfighting pieces, but we should also be focusing an equal amount, at least, on the human element as well.
Yeah, that brings up kind of a question about who do you think has done a better job at adapting to AI, with the military or healthcare?
I think it's hard to say, because I can't speak for either one, right? Like I'm a strength and conditioning coach as a civilian for the military. I guess overall, probably some healthcare agencies are probably a little bit ahead of the curve because it's probably a little bit more, let's say, capitalism, where it can yield high reward profits. So that's probably progressed slightly faster than the military system.
Going back to this article, it talks about after you get your doctoral degree, and you kind of touched on this as well, you want to continue your innovative health mentoring approach by using the expert AI system you developed to individualize workout programs for service members. How did that come about? Was that something that you did on your own, or what inspired you to do that?
So again, whenever I looked at, well, what could I progress? Let's say in week one of a fitness program, you do 3 sets of 5 at 75%. And if the person thought that was really hard, well, then maybe I'm not going to progress them as fast. But if they thought that was really easy, maybe I'll progress them a little faster. So how I read the algorithms of, well, what does that mean for the sets progression, the reps progression, the load progression, those types of things, I can automate those through this algorithmic approach. And so then that, again, frees me up to have more time to spend creating educational resources, having personal consults with people to discuss maybe personalized barriers to improve habit formation or behavior change. So again, I'm trying to automate processes that are pretty much the same decision I would be making in the first place. And then I can spend more time having these personalized discussions with people and address those barriers that they feel that they're experiencing. I've been working with AI for quite some time, so I've used it with at least a few hundred people. It's certainly seen quite a bit of benefit, and so I think again trying to apply that at scale is my main goal.
Awesome. Do you have any examples of people who've, service members who've benefited, and you've seen like some extraordinary progress from that you might not have using a different approach?
Yeah, yeah. I think again, I think that's where we get to this. The way I try to explain it is, let's say it's like having me in your pocket, where I can, if I program the model well enough, again, it'll make the decision that I would make already in the first place. And so while I may not be able to be there for a 5 a.m. training session and then another 3 separate training sessions going on at the same time for someone else, each one of those individuals could program or, let's say, input their results on any given training session or workout, and then they can have the response that I would give anyways. And so we've certainly seen a large degree of improvements in strength, improvements in endurance. I don't think anybody's seen detriments over time that I'm aware of. Someone gets this live instantaneous feedback based off of these questions that I'm baking in there that I would ask if I was live in the session with them. So for example, if they finish one heavy set, I used 3 sets of 5 at 75% as an example. If they finish that first set of 5 at 75%, and then they would look at me as a personal trainer and they would say, well, that was really easy. Then I might say, okay, let's add on. Maybe that's 2%, maybe that's 1%, whatever it is. Maybe that's 5 or 10 pounds. But then I can, basically the system can automatically add that, right? And so if I program that kind of stuff in there, then it would, again, make those same decisions I would make. That's the thing that they love the most when they look at the workout programs that we're providing is It's responsive in a logical manner where it feels like I have a trainer with me, but all I have to do is just input my results at any given time.
Oh, that's awesome. So I like to do triathlons, and I know that you have an Ironman goal in mind. I don't know how that's progressing or not. Eventually, I know you do the ultra marathons as well, right? The
Yes, sir.
and powerlifting. So, but I'm gonna do an Ironman here in October, and so I actually turned to AI. I just for fun just put in there develop a 21 week Ironman training plan for me, and it came up with pretty awesome plan, and it
Right.
showed me where like the sources and it's the method behind its madness.
Right.
I was like kind of blown away. Like
Oh yeah.
if you know how to use AI, now the hard part's like actually implementing it. So
Yeah, I think that's where there's one piece that's really interesting. So when you're looking at like asking that question, it might be worth noting that the specificity of your prompt is by far the most important element to improve the quality of the output or response you're getting back. So whenever you put in that prompt to ask it for a program, do you have any details on sort of, let's say, the context that you included in that prompt to ask that question? Or did you just say, build me a 21-week workout program and, triathlon program? Or did you also say, I'm this years old, I have this degree of experience, here's my physical performance capacity, here are the injuries I'm dealing with, I can make it out on roads this often, here's the race I'm preparing for, the elevation profile, like what else did you provide?
almost all of that.
Exactly.
And yeah, exactly. And that's what something that I'm learning about AI too is you hit the nail on the head there with the prompts are the total key to manipulating AI and having it work
Right.
for you. And so I mentioned that I did a sprint triathlon last year. I'm 54 years old. It's in Sacramento, California, and I did an Ironman in 2011. And just
Yep.
more and more that I haven't been as active as I would like to be.
Right.
This is almost like a couch. I actually phrase it a couch to Ironman program in
Sure.
21 weeks, which is kind of insane, and I'm sure a lot of people would not recommend it. But I
Sure.
just thought, hey, what the heck? Let's go for a big goal. And it
Right.
really, I couldn't find anything that quite fit the bill for me. So it really tailored that and
That's
started me
fantastic.
off nice and easy. And then the progression gets going, but
Yeah.
it I can see the method, and it's pretty awesome. So, and I've actually asked questions based on that, and it remembers. And now, because I
Exactly.
started running, and I'm like, oh, I had a a knee issue there, and it's like,
Right.
well, try this and this and this.
That's been one huge progression recently is the context window. There's some technical terms behind it, but essentially it can store more memory now than it used to be able to. And so you could keep that conversation going and you could use that again as your personal coach and say, here's my results for this session. How does that influence the next session? Here's my results for this session. How does it influence my results for the next session? And so on and so forth. And it could continue to provide more customized feedback. So certainly being able to do that. And the last thing I might say is when I'm looking at some of the prompt engineering is what you call it. So like the quality of your input prompt matters a ton. So when I'm looking at prompt engineering and how to provide those quality prompts, one thing I might say is if you don't know what other context would be valuable, just ask. So at the end of that input prompt, you could have just said, what other details do you need to know about me to improve the quality of your response? And then it would ask you questions, and then you would say, well, okay, here are the answers to those questions. Now generate the program. And then it would give it even more context that was important to know before it generates the actual program for you. So that's one of my favorite tricks to use as well.
That's a great insight there. I mean, when you look at the evolution of AI, does it kind of blow your mind, like that we're able to have these conversations, and
Yes and no. I think it might be a maybe a surprising but logical, let's say correlation between you have, let's say, the progression of Microsoft Excel or the progression of the cell phone, right? Like 20 years ago, I didn't have a cell phone, and now we can't really imagine. I mean, most everybody has a cell phone. And so when we look at the rapid progression of technology, the rapid progression of these different systems, I think when we look at the progression of all of those pieces, each one is exponential in nature. And so it's going to continue to more rapidly progress as time goes on. You have pre-training that occurs, and that's massively important, of course. But then you also have this post-training, which can happen through a couple different ways. But then that post training is, if you've ever seen like the response from AI where it'll be like, do you like this feedback or do you like this response more or this response more? And then you'll like thumbs up one or the other sometimes. And like that's actually training the model. And it's telling it how to improve it's like awareness, let's say, of the different words or like, preferred responses. And that's called the acronym for that is RLHF, which is reinforcement learning through human feedback. And so you have multiple types of RL, which is reinforcement learning, that basically kind of tweaks the model as it is producing responses, as it continues to try to improve, because it's machine learning, right? So it'll basically continue to try to improve based on the quality of whether that's human feedback or some other type of reinforcement learning. But those are super interesting to think about.
Yeah, that really is. Uh, Going back to the kind of the healthcare professions, in what ways has AI been a game changer for healthcare, whether it be the strength and conditioning coaching or in other aspects of healthcare?
Definitely. I think so. When I look at it, the frame of strength and conditioning or nutrition, there's plenty of utility when we look at the large language models, those generative pre-trained transformers, which is GPT. So that's like your Grok, your Claude, your OpenAI's, ChatGPT, those types of things, Google Gemini, right? You have a lot of different types of those models right now. Those are the ones that most people are probably familiar with. But there's also a lot of other types of AI that are kind of going on behind the scenes, let's say, where it's maybe not as popularized, but it is very impactful. So you have things like other types of neural networks or machine learning, where machine learning is doing things like where it could basically digest health information and potentially use that for predictive algorithms to, let's say, predict future possible health ailments. Or based off of these myriad factors in this person's personal health profile, it might recommend this intervention 3 years before when the doctor may have originally caught it. And so those types of things are super cool and very, very important. And so when we're looking at healthcare and the quality of healthcare, a lot of pieces of that machine learning, predictive algorithm creation, a lot of pieces of this more individualized feedback that you can give to people or more individualized comprehensive understanding. That's one of the best parts about these neural networks and machine learning models is that they essentially can pick up on patterns that humans probably won't or most humans can't because the scale of the data is so large. So again, we're looking at these from this large scale piece that I think you'll continue to see this rapid progression of individualized healthcare to every single person based on large complex machine learning models, neural networks, large language models, and this ability to digest a lot of data.
Do you see some pitfalls or some roadblocks as that progresses? Because it's inevitably going to. Maybe people are scared to like, I want a personal doctor. I don't want to deal with a computer. They've seen Terminator.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think one thing that's worth noting is first, no doctor or no healthcare provider should ever utilize AI, and that goes for professors, that goes for students, without the disclosure of its use. So that's probably first worth noting is if you go into a conversation with a doctor and they immediately start recording it for an AI summary and they don't ask that permission, like that's a problem. And that is your personal data that you should feel comfortable with disclosing and allowing AI to be a part of that or not. And so you can still basically request that feedback from whatever provider you're working with. So let's say, for example, if someone requested that, like, hey, I don't want a expert systems model, or I don't want to use, so like I've created a custom GPT, which we could get into, but maybe I don't want to use your custom GPT to ask a question to, and I'll wait a day or two when you can get back to me. And I'm like, oh yeah, no problem. Like if you don't want to use AI, I totally understand. So that's it. It's also important to never force AI on somebody, let's say, right? It's still important to have that subject matter expert sort of filter the data and not just copy and paste it. So one of the things that I see people do is utilize AI as a crutch and just copy and paste the output and assume that it's pretty much good enough. But there's a lot of small ways you can kind of tell, looking at the diction or the syntax or like the juxtaposition of different words or the repetitive nature of some words. Like you can tell when it's AI output if you use it enough. So it doesn't replace the importance of humans to still digest knowledge, understand those complexities, understand how to apply those things, sort of filter through the outputs, let's say, and make sure that they are quality enough. So It's certainly not something that I would recommend someone to use as a replacement for their own abilities or their own learning. It's something that they can definitely use as, let's say, a leverage as a tool to enhance it rather than that.
How is deep research in AI pushing the boundaries of what's possible in health sciences?
When you say deep research, are you referring to the, let's say, within about last 6 months or so, the addition of the deep research tools within large language models?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So deep research is sort of a more complicated version of advanced reasoning where you have, again, you have that machine learning model that basically tries to predict the next word. That's like what a GPT is trying to do. It's trying to, like, it's creating output by trying to predict the most likely or most useful next word. So when we think about that, and there's what's called temperature settings, where it can kind of change the creativity of what that next word will actually be and what it'll select. So it can go down multiple different branches. But essentially, then you'll see that sort of transformer turn into a reasoning model where it'll basically take some time, step back, and then it'll try to like sort of prompt itself, where it'll try attempt to understand your input first, and then it'll for deep research specifically, it'll actually try to go research the web. You can give it context and say only search peer-reviewed research articles or only search from this database, and so you can certainly add that to your deep research prompts. But that's where this reasoning piece comes in, is you put in this input like a request for research on a topic. Let's say, for example, I want to know more about one of my favorites is like creatine monohydrate, right? There's a lot of research studies on creatine monohydrate. So if I want to learn more about creatine monohydrate, well, then I might just say, okay, go research everything there is to know about creatine monohydrate. Well, then this model behind the scenes in this reasoning section, let's say it'll go pull data from these peer-reviewed research articles, and it'll basically prioritize that type of data, and then it'll come back, generate a summary of that data, and then it'll basically reread its own summary, and it'll think sort of, it'll like rethink about how it's going about doing that process, and if it needs to go pull more articles or go pull sport examples or go pull from magazine articles, it can go and do that, and then it'll come back, generate another summary of that section. And so a lot of these deep research models, you can actually expand where it'll say like show me its thinking, and that's a really fun way to like see how it's actually creating this output. Is it's kind of trying to provide itself with this its own version of what's called context awareness, which is what makes like the sort of transformers and AI and large language models like so unique, is because it has this contextual awareness of what you're trying to ask. And that's the reason why the input prompt is so important.
So you're obviously a strength and conditioning expert, but you're an AI expert as well.
I don't know about an expert. I try my best. Yeah.
Okay, whatever level, you're pretty high. Do people lean on you for your knowledge, and do you help teach people how to use AI?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always happy to have conversations with people who want to think about how they could be using AI in their own practice, who are saying, hey, I want to be maybe ahead of the curve. I want to learn more about how this might integrate into my own professional practice. And I certainly have those conversations, and I'm always happy to have those conversations. I've been blessed to speak at a couple different conferences about AI and fitness. So those have all been great opportunities. And then there's a lot of other really talented individuals in the space of AI that I've basically learned a lot of this information from. So, like I said, there's some fantastic papers from Google Health. Someone who's great with AI and expert systems is Dr. Jacob Gooden. I, and Dr. Ryan Noakes co-authored a paper about using ChatGPT to create custom fitness programs. So there's a lot of other individuals in this space. There's a lot of good research articles. I'd be happy to link for like a show notes or something. There's certainly a lot of other individuals who are probably like way smarter than I am about this stuff. But again, I think I'm just one of the people who is passionate about it, try to use it. I want to be an early adopter. I want to understand all these elements. What's the motivation to use it? And I think, again, I'm trying to use it so I can improve my ability to impact humans. I think it's less about trying to have robots take over the world. It's a lot more about how can I get deep connection with humans and impact their lives for the better. And that's my whole goal. How can I provide high quality programs, high quality behavioral interventions, high quality outputs of education systems, improve my ability to create impactful systems or create impactful products? Then I can spend more time doing other stuff that's also impactful. And so I'm sort of let's say, multiplying my ability to reach people and impact people. And that's really what I'm trying to use it for.
Well, how much are you using it for your dissertation? And then how would you suggest that students here at RMU use AI?
Yeah, so one thing that's really worth noting would certainly be RMU should, I believe, have it publicly posted. They have an AI policy letter. And like I said, you should never use AI, especially in a professional sense, without disclosure of using AI. And so if you are going to use it brainstorming for an essay or brainstorming for a PowerPoint, any of those kind of things, absolutely you should use it. Just disclose it and say, hey, like AI helped me generate an outline for this presentation. It didn't write the essay for me, right? But it basically helped me create the outline so that I had these 6 topics I wanted to talk about, and it helped me create the flow from topic to topic. But again, you can improve the quality of that content output you're producing by using the AI to maybe give you something you didn't think about. The one thing you might be able to do, let's say, is when you have a finished product, upload it to the system and just say, did I miss anything? Is there any important element that I should have covered that I didn't? Did I misrepresent some topic that I discussed in this essay that maybe I should have provided more context for? And so those types of questions are certainly really helpful and can absolutely improve your writing without replacing your ability to write, right?
Absolutely. How about professors? How do you think they can use AI a little bit more?
Yeah, so I think that this is a really interesting one because I'm not a professor. One of the things I do is certainly educate about health and wellness really super often. So coming from, let's say, my position as a student and my position as a student who certainly enjoys using AI to improve my abilities, I think again it's maybe trying to reframe how you're presenting people with AI as a whole, and then as you're presenting them with maybe assignments. So trying to maybe even include AI in an assignment. For example, you could have a recommendation that I want you to write none of this, and I want you to make a copy and paste of an AI essay, but I want you to improve your ability to input the highest quality input possible, provide as much context as possible, and create the best AI essay ever. And then you would just say, okay, create the best AI essay ever that you also 100% agree with. Again, when we look at this human connection, you have to be able to explain these things simply. You have to be able to explain the content in your essay. You have to be able to explain the content in your research study. So even if you were using AI to generate an essay, like that doesn't mean that you understand what's in it. And so one of the things that I've suggested before that I think would be really useful is instead of scheduling, let's say, an hour or 2 hour lecture, why not block off 5 hours and have a 15-minute conversation with every student and ask them the questions that you were hoping that they would respond to in an essay prompt, and just ask them that in a live conversation, record the conversation, and then you get to go back and grade their conversational response rather than their output written response. And then you can't use AI. I think that both of those are two different approaches where one, you can't use AI, and one, you're trying to enhance your ability to use AI that also agrees with what you're trying to do. People won't not use it. So how can we figure out how to, let's say, change teaching practice to, enhance the students' learning to be able to use it, but use it in an effective manner?
Are there any other ways that you use AI, like in your personal life, outside of the workplace, or you might suggest people try that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I think the first one that's worth noting in the context of who may listen to this would be Google's product called Notebook LM is the coolest thing ever when it comes to studying. But you can have deep conversations about every single one of those. So I'll say the thing I've told before, and this is fine. So for my comprehensive exam for the PhD, I created separate notebooks in Notebook LM, and then using those separate notebooks, I could have conversations about my concentration stuff and upload all 10 of those research articles and then sort of have conversations about those research articles. And it'll prioritize the use of the information from those articles. So you can either auto generate a podcast or you could actually prompt a specific podcast to be created. And I want you to have a conversation at a PhD level. And then that PhD level then will kind of give this context awareness to the auto-generated podcast. And so you can actually have these auto-generated podcasts. And then something else that's in the beta, I believe it's just for plus users, so paid subscribers, but you can actually interrupt the podcast speakers and like have conversations with the podcast speakers in the middle of the podcast that it automatically generated based off the content you uploaded.
Anything else that excites you about AI in the future?
I think when we progress into the future of AI, one thing that's worth noting is probably the massive potential for video generation, the massive potential for video analysis, and leveraging machine learning models to sort of digest that video analysis. So, you might have athletes on a field who are connected to like a GPS system, but then they can also have this biomechanical analysis that'll analyze movement patterns. Maybe they can identify deficiencies in muscular, deficiencies in like a hamstring or a knee. And then it could identify maybe injury risk based off of certain movements or certain speeds of movement or directional changes. And then the second one being more about that Google Health, personal health large language model, where I think people will continue to see more individualized attention when it comes to healthcare and more individualized approaches to how they can improve their own health in a myriad of factors. So it's not just, their strength training program, but it's also maybe supplements and nutrition and their sleep health and their social connection. And so sort of using these large language models to basically personalize healthcare.
Well, you've made it to the rapid fire round. So we're going to ask you a series of questions and just a quick 1 or 2 word response for you here.
No problem.
All right, here we go. What daily task would you like to give to AI?
I already failed the rapid fire, but daily task, I suppose handling all my emails.
Better Star Wars AI characters, R2-D2 or C-3PO?
R2D2.
Who's more dangerous, Agent Smith from The Matrix or the T-800 cyborg from Terminator 2?
Matrix.
Which one is smarter, HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey or Alexa?
HAL 9000.
What's the coolest AI tool you played with recently that kind of blew your mind?
Notebook LM.
What AI tool would you like to see brought to healthcare?
Video analysis for technical execution of sport movements.
In one word, what's the future of AI in healthcare?
Individualized healthcare.
Okay, you earned a 3.996 GPA as the Indiana University's class valedictorian in 2007.
Don't remind me.
Then you got a 3.99 GPA in grad school at Florida State University, earning your Master of Science degree in exercise physiology. So the important question, are you on track to get that elusive 4.0 GPA at RMU?
Knock on wood, yes, still on track. I have a 4.0.
Let's do it. Hey, Adam, thank you so much for your time. You're awesome. Look forward to seeing what you do with your dissertation, and best wishes the next 3 semesters and at the Space Force. That's exciting.
Thanks, sir. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
All right.